afternoon. It's Thursday, August 27. I'm Mai Rodriguez for your Midday Report. We'll be giving you the stories shaping the nation at this hour. In the headlines, as oil prices push costs higher, the BSP says it could take up to 2 years for inflation to return to the government's 3% target. You get an update from the budget hearings live.
We are ensuring that more students from disadvantaged and vulnerable sectors receive support through free college education and technical vocation education and training programs. But access must mean more than entering a university.
President Marcos has been conferred an honorary degree of Doctor of Laws by the Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila in recognition of his leadership and service to the nation. The DPWH is eyeing to build a massive detention basin at EDSA-Balintawak to ease flooding. And in Nepal, more than 160 people have been killed and hundreds of tourists are missing following a catastrophic flash flood and mudslide. This is Nepal's worst disaster since the 2015 earthquake. The high cost of living could be here to stay for longer, as the central bank warns that bringing prices back under control won't happen overnight. With global oil prices and a weaker peso adding pressure, when can Filipino consumers expect some relief? Let's find out more from the budget hearing at the Senate. Hannah T. is joining us live from there. Hannah, what's the latest?
My Philippine inflation is at 6.2%, still more than double the BSP's 3% target. This as higher global oil prices continue to feed into the costs of goods and services. And while price increases have started to slow in recent months, the BSP says it could take about 2 years before inflation returns close to target. Inflation shot up from 2.4% in February to 7.2% in April, following the escalation of conflict in the Middle East and the surge in global oil prices. It has since eased to 6.2% as of July, helped by lower oil prices and some improvement in food supply. But that is still more than double the BSP's 3% target.
At the DBCC briefing in Congress last week, I said that we worry a lot about inflation. We know how inflation affects the purchasing power of Filipino families. Indeed, surveys say that in people's minds, inflation is the leading indicator of their well-being. The main challenge we now face with regard to inflation is global supply shocks.
The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas' last forecast showed inflation averaging 6.4% this year before easing to 4.5% in 2027 and 3.1% in 2028. But those numbers could still change. The BSP is updating its inflation outlook today, with the Monetary Board also set to announce its latest policy decision this afternoon. To fight the broader effects of higher prices, the BSP has already raised its key policy rate twice this year from 4.25 to 4.75%. Governor Eli Remolona explained that interest rates cannot directly bring down world oil prices. Instead, the BSP is trying to prevent those initial price shocks from spreading across the economy, including services, by cooling demand. Senator Ping Lacson pressed the BSP on how it can bring inflation down when major drivers such as oil prices and the exchange rate are largely beyond the government's control. Remolona acknowledged that the process is slow, saying it could take 2 years for monetary policy to help bring inflation back to 3%. The weak peso was also raised as an inflation risk. Senator Erwin Tulfo noted that a weaker peso makes imported oil, food, fertilizer, and raw materials more expensive. Remolona said the BSP can manage sharp movements in the exchange rate, but cannot simply fix the peso at 60 to the dollar, warning that doing so could drain the country's dollar reserves. Tulfo also questioned whether the government's inflation assumption assumptions had to be adjusted after previously expecting prices to stabilize. Remolona said the global environment changed because of the war and oil price shock, and acknowledged that the BSP has since strengthened its scenario analysis, looking at different possible shocks and their effect on inflation. Back to you, Mai.
Hana, it's not just the Philippines that got affected by global factors, ano? Pero bakit ganito kataas yung inflation sa atin compared to other countries? What did the BSP say about this?
According to Governor Eli Remolona, mas malakas daw yung tama sa Pilipinas nitong global oil price shocks because we do not produce our own oil and are heavily dependent on imports. At ikinumpara niya ito doon sa countries like Indonesia and Malaysia, which have their own oil production, kaya meron silang some degree of advantage pagdating dito. At isa pa daw doon sa posibleng dahilan yung tinawag niya na oversimplified explanation kung saan meron kasing mga strong AI sector or AI sector itong ibang bansa kumpara sa atin, kaya wala tayong advantage pagdating sa paggamit ng AI. So for the BSP, merong two obvious na disadvantages right now ang Pilipinas, that we have neither domestic oil nor a strong artificial intelligence sector to help cushion the economy. Back to you, Mai.
Thank you. Hanatsi reporting to us live from the Senate. The Senate is pushing for a more transparent and accountable 2027 national budget, with senators also seeking stronger measures to detect corruption. The Finance Committee chairman also stresses the budget should prioritize health, education, and livelihood. Joan Manalo has the latest on the committee's briefing this morning. Joan, tell us what happened.
Mai, as the budget season begins, the Senate Committee on Finance held a briefing with the Development Budget Coordination Committee, or DBCC, to discuss the proposed 2027 National Expenditure Program, or NEP. The briefing opened with Senate Finance Committee Chair Senator J.V. Ejercito stressing that the 2027 national budget should focus on the basic needs of Filipinos as the Senate adopts a back-to-basics approach. Ejercito said health, education, food, livelihood, security, and infrastructure projects must be among the priorities of the national budget. He also stressed that transparency and accountability must be strictly upheld throughout the budget deliberations.
Iwawaksi natin ang pagwawaldas, susuriin ang bawat programa at sisiyasatin ang bawat ahensya. Dahil back to basics, dapat may pananagutan sa bawat piso at bawat sentimo ang ginagastos ng gobyerno.
The Finance Committee Chair also outlined measures the Senate plans to implement to restore public trust and curb corruption, particularly in the deliberation and the use of the national budget. These include live streaming the bicameral conference committee proceedings, as well as maintaining the Senate Budget Transparency Portal, where the public can track how the budget evolves from the initial proposal to the final enactment. Ejercito also stressed that individual amendments should be made on the floor during budget deliberations and debates, and that last-minute insertions during the bicameral conference committee will not be allowed. The Senate will also continue to work with civil society organizations and other stakeholders in monitoring the budget process, Ejercito added. Among those present during the DBCC briefing were officials from the Department of Budget and Management, Department of Finance, Department of Economy, Planning and Development, and the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. During the briefing, several senators also questioned the BSP on how it plans to address pressing economic and corruption-related issues through the 2027 national budget. Senate President Win Gatchalian pointed to the impact of corruption issues to the country's economic activity, particularly the slowdown in government spending for construction following the flood control scandal. Gatchalian also stressed the role of the BSP and the Anti-Money Laundering Council, or AMLAC, in detecting possible corruption involving bank transactions.
Because of the flood control issue, bumagal ang government spending, particularly construction. Through the investigations ng Senate, particularly spearheaded by Senator Lacson, nakita ho namin na napakadaming transaction na pumapasok sa bangko, lumalabas sa bangko, na hindi na didetect ng AMLAC. In fact, na-detect na yan, sumabog na yung corruption sa mukha natin.
Gatchalian then asked what reforms the BSP has undertaken to ensure that the AMLAC can more effectively detect possible cases of large-scale corruption involving bank transfers.
Tama po kayo na nahirapan kami sa trabaho namin. Although nakalabas naman tayo sa grade list last year. Pero kulang pa rin yun. Ang nakikita lang po namin, yung tinatawag na CTR, Covered Transactions Report, anything that's over 500,000 pesos na pumapasok sa bangko, nakikita namin yon. Tapos merong STR, yung Suspicious Transactions Report, na fina-file ng mga bangko kung suspicious sila dun sa transaction.
BSP Governor Eli Remolonas also said that the agency has allocated 125 million pesos to hire experts and invest in artificial intelligence or AI as part of its digitalization efforts, including measures to help detect and prevent corruption. He said the BSP is using AI tools to help flag potential red flags in bank records and transactions, especially those reported by banks through suspicious transaction reports. And that's the latest from the Senate. Back to you, Mai.
Thank you, Joan Manalo, live from the Senate. Senator Panfilo Ping Lacson says several crates of DPWH records related to alleged irregularities in Taguig projects will soon be submitted to the Ombudsman. The Ombudsman has requested documents from the DPWH, the Land Registration Authority, the Taguig Registry of Deeds, and the Philippine Reclamation Authority as part of the Ombudsman's fact-finding investigation into questionable infrastructure and reclamation projects in Taguig City. The probe also covers possible land title irregularities involving reclaimed areas of Laguna Lake. The Vice President's Assistant Chief of Staff admits only his boss, VP Sara, and her former Security Chief, Colonel Raymond Lachica, knew how some 500 million pesos in the OVP's confidential funds were spent. Senator Judges grilled Lemuel Ortonio, the prosecution's second hostile witness, as to who was accountable for the mysterious expenditures. Let's get an assessment on day 19 of the trial. Ihahatid sa atin yan ni Dexter Ganibe, live mula sa Senado. Dexter, go ahead.
May tinapos na ng pagdistigo sa day 19 ng impeachment trial para dito kay OVP Assistant Secretary Lemuel Ortonio. Hindi man siya nagisa sa cross-examination ng depensa, sinangkot siya naman siya sa pagtatanong ng mga senador. Hindi gaanong nagisa sa cross-examination ng depensa si Asik Lemuel Ortonio kahapon. Mas matindi kasi ang pagtatanong ng 12 senator judges kay Ortonio. Sumentro ang ilang tanong ng mga senator sa mga issue ng umano'y pagiging blind signatory ni Ortonio para sa mga confidential fund ng Office of the Vice President na pinagkatiwala lahat sa kanilang security officer na si Colonel Raymond Dante Lachica.
Yung mga sagot niyo po, it defies logic para sa isang matalinong tao. Kasi kung ako, sir, pinesenta sa akin mga ganong klaseng dokumento at nagtanong ako at hindi nasagot ng maayos, I will resign.
Napuna rin ng ilang senator ang umano'y pagiging sakitin ng mga confidential informant ng OVP dahil libu-libong piso ang inilaan para sa kanilang mga gamot.
Sakitin ba ang marami sa inyo mga informants? May mga malalang sakit ba sila?
Sir, that I would have no personal knowledge po. Sir.
You should. Kasi ito, ang dami. 170,000, 50,000, 200,000 each informant. So para mabigyan nyo ng napakalaking halaga bawat isang informant pambili ng gamot, dapat magtataka ka. Anong gamot kayong bibili nito? Bilang isang intelihenteng tao, I know you're very intelligent, you're very smart. Did you not try to ask o at least nagtaka. Baka may rheuma, arthritis, nagpapakimo. You should have asked.
Napansin naman ni Senator Ping Lacson na copy-paste lang ang laman ng kanilang mga physical and financial plans na sinumite sa DBM.
Very simply, paano nyong i-analyze yung ganitong klaseng mga descriptions?
These are the activities that will be done,
I
sir.
know. Pero
Yes,
kung
sir.
i-analyze nyo, ano ibig sabihin nito? Hindi ba ito insulto sa common sense? Hindi man lang nyo binago ng konti, at least si Colonel Lachica siguro ito. No? Unang-una, regular program, sana man lang, pagdating sa PFP, binago nyo yung nomenclature. Tapos, under the physical target, yung column, sana man lang, binago nyo yung activities. Copy-paste eh. Again, ulitin ko, tingin ko sa inyo, matalinong tao, matalinong witness, anong tingin nyo rito? Kung i-describe nyo in one word.
Sir, I cannot...
Ako na mag-describe. I think it's stupid.
May nilinaw naman ni Senator Ping Lacson sa kanyang inilabas na pahayag na yung pagbanggit niya ng salitang stupid ay hindi pa tungkol sa tao kundi dun sa mismong mga nilalaman ng kanilang PAP at PFP ng Office of the Vice President. Mai?
Dexter, yung sinasabi ni Senator Ping na copy-paste, naungkat na rin ito before, di ba, na para bang may template lang itong Office of the Vice President. So mas dumadami ang tanong as to how they conduct business in that office, in the Office of the Vice President, ano? At mas lumawak ba ang pagduda kung talagang napunta sa tamang aktibidad ang pondo?
Actually, Mai, sinabi rin ni Senator Ping Lacson na yung posibilidad na pagpapasapina ng mga karagdagan pang mga dokumento mula sa Office of the Vice President o kaya sa COA na may kaugnayan sa confidential fund ng OVP. Nang sa gayon ay malaman, makita mismo ng mga senator judges yung mga karagdagang detalye na ito, kung totoo bang may tao, kung totoong tao ba yung informant na nabigyan ng pera, nabigyan ng confidential fund. Dahil hanggat walaan niya yung mga dokumentong ito, mananatiling bitin at nandun yung pagdududamay.
Dexter, so nasagot din ba nung maayos kung bakit sa mga gamot na gastos ang pera at tila sakitin daw ang mga informant? Sabi ito ni Senator Judge Erwin Tulfo, di ba?
Yung mga katanungan na yan, Mai, very evasive din itong si Ortonio sa kanyang pagsasagot kahapon sa interjection ng mga senator judges na tila ba nagbigay ng impresyon sa mga senator judges na parang taliwas sa kanyang katalinuhan yung kanyang mga ginawa noon bilang isa sa mga pinakamataas na opisyal na may kinalaman doon sa pagtitiyak na naliliquidate na nagastos ng maayos yung confidential fund. At yung kanyang katanungan ay yung kanyang mga kasagutan ay laging napupunta doon sa pagtitiwala nila, doon sa kanilang security officer na si Colonel Dante Lachica. Lahat ng mga sinusumite ay nakaselyado na at hindi na niya binubuksan at ito ay sinusumite na doon sa mga tugon nila, sa mga AOM at doon sa mga dokumento na hinihingi sa kanila ng COA. Mai.
Dexter, tukol naman dito kay Attorney Michael Poa, Defense Counsel at spokesperson. Siya daw ay potential witness ng prosecution, tama ba?
Tama, Mai. Binanggit yan kahapon ng prosecution at ni-request nila na maisama sana siya sa mabigyan ng subpoena dahil ipepresenta siya bilang isa sa kanilang mga witness sa mga susunod na pagdinig. Pero sinabi nga ng impeachment court, presiding officer Chis Escudero, hindi na kailangan dahil nandun na rin naman si Attorney Michael Poa sa korte at sinabihan na lang siya na siya ay titistigo sa mga susunod na araw at tatawagin na uupo doon sa witness box. At sa kanyang press con kahapon, may sinabi naman niya na nakahanda siyang sagutin lahat ng mga tanong ng prosekusyon kapag ito ay may kaugnayan sa kanyang pagiging opisyal ng Department of Education, particular na doon sa mga ginawa nila noon para tugunan yung AOM na inisyo ng COA sa DepEd may kaugnayan doon sa confidential fund ng DepEd. Pero sabi niya, hindi naman siguro hahantong yung mga katanungan na aabot doon sa kanyang tawag dito, doon kanyang isasabihin sa korte yung attorney-client privilege. Sana, sabi niya, sana hindi umabot sa ganon dahil kung may kinalaman lang naman sa kanyang trabaho bilang isang dating opisyal ng DepEd, ay sasagutin niya ang lahat ng ito, Mai.
Maraming salamat, Dexter Ganibe, live mula sa Senado. Former Senate President Franklin Drilon is convinced the prosecution has presented compelling evidence linking the Vice President to the use of her confidential funds. On BNC's On Point, Drilon pointed to the testimonies of hostile witnesses Gina Acosta and Lemuel Ortoño, saying their accounts showed VP Sara's knowledge in the handling of the funds in question.
To me, it is very significant that the prosecution was able to establish that from square one, from the first instance, the receipt of the confidential funds, the disbursement, the approval of the liquidation had the direction and had the direction and knowledge of the Vice President. To me, this is a very compelling evidence, and therefore, I would wait until the defense would come up with explanation as to whether or not this is true. Because to me, this is a damaging evidence that the prosecution has shown that it is the Vice President, it was the Vice President who directed everything. The cross-examination of Attorney Vinagracia showed all of that. And to me, as I said, this is a compelling evidence, but I want to wait as to what the defense
will
Yes.
say.
Drilon also backs the prosecution's cautious approach on whether to call Colonel Raymond Lachica to the witness stand. He says prosecutors should first determine what Lachica can add to the case, adding there's a risk that he can undermine what they have established so far. Up next, the DILGI's mandatory home inspections for gun owners following a series of incidents of school violence. That and more stories when Midday Report returns. Stay with us. You're back on Midday Report. The DILG is pushing for tougher measures on gun ownership, including possible mandatory inspections of homes where service firearms are kept. Meanwhile, the agency is also seeking more funding for jails and other security measures as it proposes changes to existing firearms laws. Kumuha tayo ng detalye kay Isaiah Mirafuentes live mula sa Batasang Pambansa. Isaiah, go ahead.
May supposedly ngayon sana ang budget hearing para sa Office of the President but it was cancelled and patuloy pa nga nating inaalam kung ano yung dahilan. However, nagpapatuloy ang budget deliberation naman para sa pondo ng Department of Interior and Local Government at ayon mismo kay Interior Secretary John Vic Rimulya, kabilang sa kanilang mga proposal ay ang pagkakaroon ng tinatawag na mandatory checking sa mga premises o mga bahay ng mga legal na nagmamay-ari ng armas. At kabilang sa kanilang susuriin, Mai, ay kung maayos ba nila itong napoprotektahan. Kasunod yan ang sunod-sunod na shooting incident sa mga eskwelahan na ang dahilan ay kapabayaan umano ng mga kaanak ng mga estudyante. Hiling ni Secretary Rimulya, bigatan ang batas para sa negligence ng mga gun owner. Isa rin sa mga proposal ni Secretary Rimulya is to repeal yung Robin Padilla Law o ang Republic Act number 8294, ang batas na nagpapababa ng parusa sa illegal possession of loose firearms dahil kasi dito nagkaroon na ito ng piyansa para sa kalihim ng DILG, dapat maging non-bailable na ito. May kabilang rin sa hinihiling na pondo ng DILG ang pagdadagdag na pondo para sa BJMP. Yan nga raw ay kung sakaling maripel itong Robin Padilla dahil naniniwala sa Secretary Rimulya na tiyak raw na madadami ang makukulong sakaling maging non-bailable ang kasong pagdadala ng mga loose firearms. Maliban dyan, May, nabanggit din ngayong umaga ni Rimulya na kabilang sa kanyang mga hinihiling sa mga mambabatas ay i-ban na o i-block na ang larong Roblox sa Pilipinas dahil kung siya raw ang tatanungin, naniniwala siya na ang larong ito ay may masamang epekto raw, partikular na sa mga kabataan. Samantala may kaugnay sa total funds ng DILG, aabot yan sa mahigit 332.5 billion pesos, 7% na mas mataas sa budget ngayong taon. May.
Ay saya, doon sa proposal ng DILG, ano daw klaseng paghihigpit ang kailangan dito sa mga gun owners?
May ang sinasabi kanina ni Secretary Rimulya, gusto nilang masiguro na itong mga baril o mga armas na mga legal na nagmamay-ari ay nakalagay sa maayos na lagayan dun sa kanilang mga tahanan. Dapat daw may safety spot ito sa bahay nila na tiyak daw na hindi naaabot ng kanilang mga anak o ng mga bata. Maliban dyan, may sinabi rin kanina ni Secretary Rimulya na one of the measures na gusto nilang maipatupad, especially nga pag napasa yung budget nila, ay yung pagkakaroon ng mga additional security officials sa loob ng mga paaralan. Specifically, ito yung mga barangay tanod. Ang gusto nila, sila raw yung mag-check na o makabilang na sa mga magbabantay sa loob mismo ng mga schools para raw masiguro rin na mas maghihigpit ang mga paaralan sa seguridad sa loob ng kanilang mga paaralan, ng kanilang mga premises. And other than that, may gusto rin nilang idagdag na kada papasok at palabas sa mga estudyante ay may mga standby daw na mga police officers. Mike.
Alright, maraming salamat. Isaiah Mira Fuentes, live mula sa Batasang Pambansa. The pamantasan ng lungsod ng Maynila has conferred an honorary Doctor of Laws degree to President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. in recognition of his service to the nation. Let's get the details from Ivy Reyes, live from Manila. Ivy, go ahead.
Yes, my President Bongbong Marcos now has an honorary degree of Doctor of Laws as a pamantasan ng lungsod ng Maynila or PLM confers this degree in recognition of his leadership according to PLM's Board of Regents. At the 58th commencement exercises of PLM's Batch 2026, PLM said they approved the resolution granting the President this degree due to his, quote, service to the nation and the education sector. PLM cites the administration's legislation centered around youth development, education, social welfare, and mental health, as well as the President's background in public service as a legislator as demonstrations of his qualifications to acquire this honorary degree. Aside from PLM, the degree is also signed by the Commission on Higher Education, the Philippine Association of Law Schools, and the Philippine Association of Law Professors. As Marcos receives this title, the President said he holds the same standard as PLM, that education shouldn't be limited by circumstances. PBBM also made mention of how special the university is to the first couple, as First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos once taught in their College of Law.
We are ensuring that more students from disadvantaged and vulnerable sectors receive support through free college education and technical vocation education and training programs. But access must mean more than entering a university. It must mean providing our students, regardless of circumstance, the support needed to complete their education and to realize the promise that a college degree can bring.
The president adds that the honor conferred upon him reduced the administration's commitment to funneling more assistance into higher education, such as the Presidential Merit Scholarship Program, where 5 students per barangay in each locality is chosen to receive a 20,000 peso cash aid. On other palace matters, Malacanang is holding a press briefing right now to address other issues such as the Vice President's impeachment trial and the massive flash flood in Nepal. And this information just came in. The Foreign Affairs Department and the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration, or OWA, confirmed that there are no Filipino casualties recorded as of this morning in Nepal. Mai.
Thank you, Ivy Reyes, live from Manila. For thousands of students, the next school year could come with an uncertain future. The Commission on Higher Education warns its proposed 2027 funding may not be enough to keep students in its scholarship and subsidy programs. Janina Vela is on the line for the latest. Janina?
More than 150,000 students could lose access to scholarships and other forms of higher education support next school year if the Commission on Higher Education does not get the additional funding it is seeking for 2027. At the CHED budget hearing, Chairperson Shirley Agrupis said the agency requested 70.283 billion pesos, but the National Expenditure Program set aside just 35.453 billion. That leaves a funding shortfall of nearly 34.8 billion pesos, with several major programs facing reduced allocations. Agrupis warned that 137,000 students in 29 local universities and colleges could be left out if the Universal Access Program receives just 6.97 billion pesos instead of the 29.1 billion pesos CHED proposed. She also said that insufficient funding for tertiary education subsidies could affect more than 833,000 beneficiaries. For the Bagong Pilipinas Merit Scholarship Program, CHED proposed 2.632 billion pesos, but the NEP allocated only 1.589 billion. Agrupis said the funding gap could mean more than 19,000 applicants will miss out on scholarships. And for CHED, the concern is clear. A bigger funding gap could mean fewer students getting the support they need. Back to you, Mai.
Thank you, Janina Vela reporting. The Public Works Department is taking its flood control plans to the ground just a day after defending its proposed 2027 budget. Officials are now looking at a major detention basin in EDSA-Balintawak to help keep floodwaters at bay. Kumuha tayo ng detalye kay Charmaine Abong. Charmaine?
May plano ng Department of Public Works and Highways o DPWH ang pagpapatayo ng isang malaking detention basin sa bahagi ng EDSA-Balintawak bilang pangunahing hakbang para mabawasan ang matinding pagbaha sa lugar. Sinabi ito ni DPWH Secretary Vince Dizon ngayong umaga matapos ang inspeksyon sa lugar kasama ang mga kawani ng NLEX at Quezon City LGU para pag-aralan ang posibleng lokasyon at mga hakbang sa pagpapatayo ng proyekto. Ayon sa kalihim, hindi lamang EDSA-Balintawak ang inaasahang makikinabang sa proyekto.
Ang maganda dito is pag natayo natin yon is hindi lang natin maiipsan yung bago sa EDSA. Kundi yung pababa, mapuntang all the way to Gianeta, mababawasan natin.
Samantala, sinabi ni Secretary Dizon na kailangan pa ring tugunan ng mga usapin sa right-of-way bago maisakatuparan ang naturang proyekto. Bukod dito, palalawigin din aniya ang maliliit pang pumping station ng NLEX habang ang DPWH naman ang bahala sa disenyo at pagbomba ng tubig.
Nakahanda po ang NLEX, ang Metro Pacific at si Chairman MVP na tumulong at tumugon sa ano pang request ng ating gobyerno sa pangunguna ni Sec Vince. Gaya po nasabi ni Sec Vince, gagawin din po namin yung ginawa natin sa Valenzuela, sa part ng Botas at sa Metro Manila, kung saan po ay nakita nyo naman na kahit gaano kalakas ang ulan ng nakarang linggo na habagat, ay passable pa din po ang entrance at napakabilis po bumaba ng baha sa Valenzuela.
Ayon sa DPWH, planong matapos ang proyekto bago ang tag-ulan next year. Habang tiniyak naman ni Secretary Dizon na hindi masasayang ang maiipon na tubig baha dahil makikipag-ugnayan na din sila sa Manila Water at sa Maynilad para gawin itong potable water. Balik sa iyo, Mai.
Maraming salamat, Charmaine. Pero hanggang saan ba umaabot ang tubig baha dyan sa bahagi ng Balintawak nitong mga nagdaang pag-ulan?
May nitong nagdaang malalakas na pag-ulan, umabot daw yung baha hanggang Lampas Binti. Ayon sa mga nakausap nating residente, madalas daw bahain itong ang mga bahay at kalsada dito sa paligid, lalo na kapag umapaw na itong creek malapit sa MRT Balintawak. May.
Charmaine Abong, nag-uulat. Maraming salamat, Charmaine. The Budget Department recently announced an allocation of 1 billion pesos to Project NOAA of the UP Resilience Institute. How will the said program utilize the funds to help minimize the impact of calamities? Ched Gatchalian is on the line for this. Ched, go ahead.
My Project NOAA is set to put 1 billion peso allocation to work using AI technology and science to help communities better prepare for floods and other disasters. In a press briefing this morning, Project NOAA Executive Director Alfredo Maharlagmay said much of the funding will go to drones, high-tech equipment, and partnerships with state universities and colleges. The agency plans to map major river basins in high resolution, survey hidden waterways, and use LiDAR drones to study areas prone to flooding. The funding will also support flood simulations, sediment assessments, native tree mapping, and nature-based solutions, including the use of AI or artificial intelligence for disaster preparedness. Lagmay says Project NOAA will provide LGUs and national agencies with science-based data to help them make better decisions and ultimately reduce the damage caused by natural hazards. He acknowledged that in the past, decision-making often lacked the kind of science-based assessments that today's technology can provide.
Ganon ang nangyayari. How many decades have we been doing this? From the 70s, even before that, 60s, 70s, decades. But with all of these technologies that are now available, we can get a better understanding so that we know the exact and most effective solutions.
What creates disaster, tragedy, is our lack of preparation. Hindi talaga mapigilan ng lindol. Hindi mapigil because tectonic movements, volcanoes, climate change. No? Ang purpose natin dito is to prepare to build a resilient society para ma-menos-menos ang damage to number one life.
Project NOAA also clarified that it will be not the sole agency implementing disaster preparedness measures, but will instead support partner LGUs with science-based recommendations. The success of the 1 billion peso allocation, Lagmay says, will ultimately be measured by how effectively its data and recommendations help reduce flooding, disaster risk, and losses. Back to you, Mai.
Thank you, Ched Gatchalian, reporting. Flooding continues to plague communities in parts of Bulacan, with some residents still stranded in their homes. Senator Lito Lapid is on the ground to check on affected families and bring much-needed relief. On the line is Micah Razon. Micah, what's the update and how's the situation there?
My flooded homes and roads greeted Senator Lito Lapid during his visit to Hagonoy and Kalumpit, Bulacan today. Lapid went to the two towns to check on residents who continue to deal with flooding, even without rain, and to distribute relief goods.
Wala akong masasabi kay Senator Lito Lapid. Bukod sa idol ko siya, talagang wala akong nakikitang mga ginagawa niyang mali.
Residents line up to receive the relief packages, while others took the opportunity to have their photos taken with the senator. Some residents said that they have long looked up to Lapid, not only as a senator but also as a former action star. To you, Mai.
Micah, kumusta ang sitwasyon dyan, particularly sa Kalumpit?
May maaraw dito ngayon sa Kalumpit, pero kahit maaraw, nananatiling lubog pa rin yung ibang kabahayan at kalsada. Ang sabi ng mga residente, ganun daw talaga sa kanila at nakasanayan na nila yun. Kaya sana yung mga flood control funds na nilalaan sa kanila ay sana mapakinabangan nila.
May kabukod sa Kalumpit, may iba pa bang pupuntahan dyan sa Bulacan si Senator Lapid para sa mga relief operations?
Bukod nga may sana puntahan niya ang Hagonoy at Kalumpit, ay babalik na daw si Senator Lapid sa Pampanga at sa susunod niyang bibisitahin ay ang Baguio para naman daw tulungan yung mga farmers na nalulugi na sa mga binebenta nilang gulay. Mai?
Maraming salamat. Maika Razon, nag-uulat. The Philippine economy could face a bumpy road ahead, with regional economists seeing pressures from weaker consumer spending, rising prices, and global uncertainties. AMRO is now lowering its growth outlook for the country while warning that several risks could still derail the recovery. Che Sulit is joining us live from the BSP headquarters. Che.
The AMRO, or the ASEAN Plus 3 Macroeconomic Research Office, said that they are expecting Philippine economic growth to be slower this year compared to last year. AMRO Group Head and Lead Economist Jinho Choi said they forecast the economy to grow by just 3.4% this year, down from 4.4% in 2025. The group said weaker private consumption, higher inflation, and subdued investment are weighing on economic activity.
The Philippines has been facing two different shocks, one from external sector supply driven, and the other one for domestic demand shock. So because of two different shocks, the real GDP has been decelerated for 4 quarters in a row.
The regional macroeconomic watchdog expects growth to recover to 4.8% in 2027, supported by a gradual pickup in public construction and resilient exports. AMRO also sees inflation surging to 5.4% this year from 1.7% in 2025, before easing to 3.8% next year. Choi also flags higher global energy prices driven by external pressures as the most immediate risk to the economy.
But as you know, still there are huge uncertainty on the development of Middle East conflict, so we will leave it as the upside risk. Also, we acknowledge that there's a potential risk on the El Nino, super El Nino, or this minimum wage hike, which we couldn't fully incorporate into our forecast.
AMRO also urges the government to revive public investment and contain second-round effects of inflation. Choi adds that any delay in the expected recovery of well-governed infrastructure spending could further dampen the growth momentum.
Overall sentiment has been weak because of this flood control related scandal. They have some negative spillover to private investment and so other industries. That's why we expect that this year consumption will be a bit moderated, softened, and then it will be recovered next year.
AMRO also says further interest rate hikes by the BSP may be needed if core inflation remains elevated or inflation expectations begin to rise. Over the medium term, AMRO is urging the Philippines to upskill workers and help the semiconductor and IT BPM sectors adapt to rapid advances in artificial intelligence, or AI. That's the latest from my end here at the BSP headquarters. Back to you, Mai.
With the inflation still elevated, could higher wages add even more pressure on prices? What's AMRO's take on this?
Mai, that's right. Inflation is still high, so AMRO says that the Philippines should be cautious about the pace of wage hikes. AMRO Chief Economist Dong Ha says that wage growth should generally be in line with productivity growth. He warns that wages rising too quickly could still add to inflationary pressures, which could eventually erode real incomes. AMRO also notes that the economy may still be operating below its potential, so they advise the government that any wage increase should be adjusted to current economic conditions. Mai?
Thank you, Che Sulit. Live from the BSP headquarters in Manila. The Department of Trade and Industry is expanding market opportunities for locally made coconut products to help create more jobs and livelihoods for Filipinos. Jill Sebandal gives us the story.
Business owners from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao took part in the trade fair, showcasing Filipino-made coconut products to a wider market. From farmers and small business owners to entrepreneurs looking to expand, the DTI seeks to open more pathways to jobs, livelihoods, and business opportunities. DTI Secretary Cristina Roque also assures a Filipino that she will personally see to it that more job opportunities are created.
It is also our responsibility, the government and the businesses, to provide jobs for them. And definitely, we will provide opportunities for you. Rest assured, ako nga hawak niyan, and I've done it for a lot of people. So definitely, we will get this done.
As the government strengthens the coconut industry and opens bigger markets for Filipino products, the goal is not only to grow businesses, but also to create more opportunities for Filipinos to build better lives. From coconut farmers to entrepreneurs across the country, the DTI says it will continue to open more markets and create more jobs and livelihood opportunities for Filipinos. Jill Sebandal, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Coming up, Alex Ayala's historic rise to world number 18 gets a colorful tribute at an iconic community court in Taguig. More sports headlines plus the latest news around the world when Midday Report returns. In Nepal, catastrophic flash floods and mudslides have killed at least 160 people and left hundreds more missing. They include more than 400 tourists from about 28 countries. Distressing footage of the gigantic wall of water hitting villages shows just how horrific the disaster is, which hit a popular route to a sacred pilgrimage site in Tibet. The death toll is expected to rise, and rescue and recovery operations are expected to face huge challenges. Authorities say a massive collapse of glacial ice and rock triggered the flooding along the Nepal-China border. This is Nepal's worst disaster since the 2015 earthquake. In Montana, a family dinner turned deadly after a 44-year-old man allegedly shot and killed 8 of his relatives, including 4 children. Police say they heard gunshots before the home was completely engulfed in flames. The victims included the suspect's parents, grandmother, sister, and 4 kids. Among them was a 12-year-old child whom reports say called 911 during the attack. The suspect was also found with an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound and later died. Police have not yet confirmed the motive, but some say the man had been asked to move out of his parents' home and return during the Sunday dinner. Alex Ayala's historic rise to world number 18 is now celebrated through a new mural at the iconic Fort Bonifacio tenement, honoring the Filipina tennis star's breakthrough on the international stage. Zeus Valdez has the story.
A new mural honoring Alex Ayala now stands at the iconic Fort Bonifacio tenement in Barangay Western Bicutan, Taguig City. The colorful artwork features the Filipina star in her tennis gear, racket in hand, celebrating her historic rise to world number 18 in the WTA rankings. Ayala's ranking made her the highest-ranked Filipino and Southeast Asian player in WTA singles history. The project brought together the tenement visual artists in Tahanan Incorporated with Voice and Paints Philippines led by Bilyonaryo Justin Ongsu, providing the paints used for the artwork. Among the artists is Adrian Piñon, a new artist discovered by the team who also lives in the tenement community. According to the artist, BPI also provided support for the project. The 63-year-old tenement basketball court has long been a gathering place for the community. Now it also serves as a tribute to Ayala's achievements and the support she continues to receive from Filipino fans. At 21, Ayala is enjoying a breakthrough season highlighted by her first WTA singles title in Washington and her first entry into the world's top 20. As Ayala continues her US Open campaign, her image will now also remain on the walls of the tenement, a colorful tribute to a Filipina athlete who continues to make history. Zeus Valdez, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Somber news in Hollywood. The world just lost another legend as Tim Curry has died at 80 years old. This comes just a day after the passing of country music icon Dolly Parton. The British actor, best known as Dr. Frankenfurter in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, died peacefully in his home in Los Angeles. He was an iconic performer across film, Broadway, television, and voice acting. Fans and fellow performers remembered him as a once-in-a-lifetime talent who took risks and left an unforgettable mark on entertainment. Filipino designer VJ Floresca is proving she's a bride who can truly make it all. She designed not just her wedding gown, but also her after-party dress. The Project Runway winner gave fans a peek at her big day, sharing photos of the stunning looks she personally created. The wedding comes months after the designer announced her engagement in February and nearly a year after she made history as the season 21 winner of the U.S. edition of Project Runway. And that's the Midday Report. I'm Mai Rodriguez. I'll see you again tomorrow at 1 p.m. Stay informed and stay safe.